Okay, pivot tables. What we're going to be doing here is sort of jumping off where we left off in the last video, which is I have a sort of a more trimmed down version of our tax parcel data, and this includes what we have sort of pretended to have filled in based on our field work. This is the sector number, the LBCS codes for these 5 dimensions, and then also these 2 columns here, which is tax value, which is standardized and controlled for the size of the parcel. So this is a per square foot value. And then an identifier here to tell us whether an owner is local or whether it is an absentee, non-local owner. All right, so with this information that we've collected, we can actually create a tremendous amount of information to describe land use activity and also to look at something like the value of land. And so the way that we do this best is with the pivot table. And so what I'm going to do to create a pivot table is to highlight those fields, right, those columns that I want to mess around with, what I want to play around with in my pivot table. So once I've selected them, I am going to go and click on the button for pivot tables. This is a difference between the Mac version and the Windows version. To do this in the Mac, I click on Beta, and then what I see here is a button called Pivot Table. If I remember correctly, in Windows, it is in the Insert area. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on Pivot Table. Not bother playing down. Click on Pivot Table. And what it does automatically is that it inserts a sheet, and within that sheet inserts a pivot table based on some factors. We'll go through those really quickly. Keep in mind that there's probably an added step in Windows asking you if you want to place it as a location or a sheet. Go through those selections right there. And make those, and you'll come up with something a bit like this. So, continuing the difference between Mac and Windows, the builder and the other sort of dialogue boxes we might see look a little bit differently on Mac than they do in Windows, but they function exactly the same way. All right, within this pivot table builder, under field name, this has the field names for all of the columns or all of the variables that we have selected. We've got sector, activity, function, structure, site, ownership, t-value, tax value, and local. You'll see the little radio buttons next to them. That tells us whether something is actually active or not, displayed or not within our pivot table. Below field name, we see an array of possibilities here. Under column labels, this is the sector, right, the area within downtown Boone that a parcel might be in, sectors 1 through 4, and you'll see them on the pivot table 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right? So this is the sector 1, sector 2, sector 3, sector 4. If we wanted to change what we see across the columns, I can take sector out, drag something else in, but I want sector there right now, so I'm going to keep it there. Under row labels, well, what we have here is the differences that we see along these rows. Okay, I see activity, so this is the LBCS activity dimension. It will have a 1 through 9 value, and what I see within this pivot table is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then under values, what values does is it displays the contents of a cell based on its intersection between the column variable and the row variable. And so this block of numbers that we see right here is the count of, as we see here, it is the count of what? Tax value. It is the count of tax value that we have sliced and diced so we can differentiate between parcels that are within sector 1 Okay, so this is a distribution of the count of tax value. It doesn't make much sense right now. But basically what this is displaying is the number of parcels that, let's say this number 4 is within sector 1 and has an activity code of 1. Okay, there's 4 of those parcels in your entire data set. This grand total right here, this ends up being the count of parcels within sector 1. 40 is the count of parcels within sector 2. 34 is the count of parcels within sector 3. 28 is the count of parcels within sector 4. Likewise, the grand total, this column, this number 17 means that there are 17 parcels with an activity code equal to 1. 14 parcels with an activity code equal to 2. 15 parcels with an activity code equal to 3. This number 130, this is the number of parcels that are in the data set right here. So of all activity descriptions and all sectors, we have 130 parcels. Okay, so this, it describes what a pivot table is, but it doesn't do a very good job of describing what could be done with this pivot table. Probably the best thing that we can do, I'm going to keep everything the same except under values, what I'm going to be doing is clicking on this information button. Right? I think there's like a pull down button for Windows. And what I see here is what's going on within this cell right here, down in this area. I can change what is being summarized. And what we have here are all the different ways that we can summarize this information within the pivot table. Right now it's just a count. What is it a count of? A count of observations. What are the observations we're dealing with right here? These are parcels. So it's merely a count of parcels. Now one of the things that we can do, if I take average right here, okay, if I click on that, you'll notice that the field name changes a little bit. We're still dealing with tax value, so it is the average tax value that we're dealing with, both among column and row labels. So I'm going to select average, click OK, and you'll notice that the table changes, right? The contents of that table change. We are still dealing with tax value. We are still dealing with the activity function. We are still dealing with a breakdown of sector, right? What area a parcel might happen to be in. The only thing that's changed is we're looking at the average tax value, not the count of parcels that have tax value associated with it. Right? We interpret things in much the same way. What I see across the top here, sector 1, sector 2, sector 3, sector 4, I see activity code 1, activity code 3, 5, 7, 9. You get the idea there. The contents of this change. What I see here is the average tax value. In this instance right here, $40.10. Right, we're going to mess with the formatting, but this is $40.10 on average for the parcels that are in sector 1 and have an activity code equal to 3. That's what we're dealing with right here. So one way that we can look at and interpret this table, if I pick this row right here for activity code 3, I see that there's a bit of variation as we go from sector 1 to sector 2 to sector 3 to sector 4 in what the average tax value might happen to be. Okay, so if I look at those activities equal to 3, in sector 1 they have the lowest value of the 3 sectors associated with that. Right, sector 4 with an average value of $108.23. Sector 4 has the most highly valued activity 3 parcels in it. Looking at this in another way, if I look at this column right here, all right, this is all parcels within sector 1. Okay, and if I scroll through each of these values right here, I can identify within sector 1 which parcels of a specific activity are the least valued and the most valued on average. All right, so just sort of eyeballing this right here, activity 8, right? $38.48 per square foot. That looks like it is the least valued on average within sector 1. The most highly valued on average within sector 1, it is looking like activity number 7, activity type 7, $82.38. So you get the idea, right? So if I do this, right, for each of these activities, right, looking at which sectors is the highest and the least valued on average, and then do the same thing within sectors, find out which activities in each sector are on average the highest and the least valued. Right? It presents us with a tremendous amount of information. Now, with respect to the grand totals, if I look at this column right here, what this grand total is that $62.36 is the average value for all parcels within sector 1, regardless of the activities, right? It's, we're kind of ignoring that when we're looking at the grand totals. $65.83, this is the average parcel value, average tax value within sector 2. Right? This is with sector 3, sector 4. So just looking at this right here, I can find out where on average the most highly valued and least valued properties are based on that tax value variable that we created. Right, we can do the same thing here for our activities. These numbers right here are the grand total of tax value, and it's differentiated by, as we see here, the activity codes. So this $46.09. This is the average tax value for all of the parcels that are described as activity code 1. $59.61, right? This is the average tax value of all properties in the study area with an activity code of 2. And so looking at this string of numbers right here, we can find out within our study areas, regardless of where they might happen to be, where on average the more highly valued activities are, or the more highly valued tax value figures based on their activity code. So just eyeballing this right here, what I am seeing is that activity 6, right, is it's activity 5, right, is the most highly valued type of activity within the study area at $76.19 per square feet. Least valued, kind of scrolling through here, what I am seeing is $40.92, right? This is activity number 8. So within our study area, activity number 8 has on average the least valued property. Okay, so with this, one of the things that we're going to do is we can use this sheet right here as basically a scratch pad to create this table right here. And what I want to do is to copy and paste this information elsewhere in a format that makes it easier to create a chart out of. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to after selecting the table, pivot table, Control C, copy this. I'm going to add a sheet, and right around here I'm going to paste this, but I'm not going to paste the pivot table. I'm just going to paste the values that are in that pivot table. So I'm right click, paste special, and then I click on values. All I'm interested in is the values, and I'm going to be messing around with those. Okay, so I have this. Look at the top corner here. You'll notice that this doesn't look like that sort of dynamic pivot table that we had before, but it has all the information there. I've got this average of tax value. And one of the things I want to do, because it doesn't explain in here what exactly we're looking at, is what these row labels are. I know it's average tax value. I'm not sure what the column labels are. I'm not sure what the row labels are just by looking at it. But I know, because we just did this, is that we are looking in terms of the row labels, activity, column labels, or sector. Okay? So I have all the information I have here to create a great table and a great chart. So now I want to go back to that pivot table sheet. And what I want to do is, I did this by activity. Well, I don't want activity anymore. Put that up there. I have that information. I want to go to the next dimension, function. So the row labels are all function. Column labels, we didn't do anything to them, so these are still sector. Okay, so what we have here, I kept it on average value, and so that's what these numbers are right here, the average value of parcels within sectors, and by function code. We interpret this the same way, but it's described differently because we're looking at the function as opposed to activity as we had in the previous table. And once I have this, I'm going to copy. And what I'm going to go to is my sheet right here, the sort of destination. And I'm going to put this just underneath. I am going to paste it as values. And then I want to be sure that this says function. I want to be sure that this says sector. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and do this for each of the, basically create in total 5 tables, one for each of the dimensions. Okay, and this is each of the dimensions, and we're looking at sector. Now, we're not finished yet. What I'm going to do is I go back to this table, and I think one of the things that I might want to do, we have column labels. This is by sector. I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, and what I'm going to do is that I want to find out what sort of differences there might be if I put that our variable local in here, is look at if there's any interesting distinction, right, between non-resident owners, absentee owners, and local owners. Is there some sort of pattern there that we might see? Kind of going to the bottom, right? What we're looking at here in terms of the grand total is that on average, local owners tend to have slightly higher valued properties on average, right, than absentee owners. Okay, so that's an interesting table right there. The other thing that might be really interesting, we can create kind of like the ultimate sort of a table. And what I've done is I place sector back down here in the column labels. I put local as the report filter. Because another thing that we can do with this, what this report filter does, if we look up at the very top here, is this button right here, if we click it, allows us to create the tables that we did previously, right? Those tables, right, that we started to do here, right, by activity, by function, and sector. What we can do is that we can create that same sort of table, but with this button right here, what I can do is where local is equal to 0, I have that table, and everything that is in here in this table is the average tax value of parcels by sector and by, in this case, I think it's activity function, or excuse me, activity code. all right, for those parcels where local is equal to 0, right? So this is non-local valuation. I can change this filter from 0 to 1, and it's the same table for local owners. Now, one of the things that you'll find out, and one of the things that you probably noticed, within non-local ownership, right, by sector and by activity code, is that there's a lot of blank space in there. And it's kind of, I would say, sort of meaningless. But in these sorts of instances, and I would say that, you might feel as if you're swimming in information, is that we can just sort of rely on the grand totals, right? And not necessarily look at the specific values here by this sort of cross section, but look at these grand totals here for non-local ownership within sector 1, within sector 2, sector 3, sector 4. Right, and you'll notice as we go from, if we do this from dimension to dimension, these numbers are, by and large, are going to be staying the same for non-local and local owners, right? Differences that we might see here, we got the grand total for non-local ownership of average tax value within these activity descriptions. Oh, excuse me, there are functions, right, but you get the idea. Okay. So, what we'll do is we'll end this here, and what I am going to do in the next video, right, working from this information right here, with this sort of raw data from a tabular point of view, we're going to create a couple of charts.